Hi everyone. Today's topic is pulmonary function test. Let us discuss it under the following headings: introduction, assessment of ventilation, assessment of gas exchange, assessment of pulmonary circulation, and then spirometry and its clinical applications. Pulmonary function tests. Before getting into it, let us know the basic functions of the lung. The primary function of the lung is to maintain the tension of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, in the arterial blood, so that is within the normal range. And the fundamental mechanisms involved in doing this is ventilation and then diffusion and then perfuse it to the tissue, right? So the assessment of the type and degree of functional impairment caused by various diseases is important. So the some of the to know some of the pulmonary disorders, you have to get proper history before doing the test. So though most of the pulmonary function tests require some sophisticated instruments, so there are also some simple tests and non-invasive and very cheap tests to assess the pulmonary function test. So the term pulmonary function test that encompasses a wide variety of objective methods to assess the lung function. So as we are discussing, so this evaluates the major aspects of the respiratory system, that is the ventilation, gas exchange, diffusion, and then perfusion. So the pulmonary circulation. So lung volumes and capacities are quantitative measurements of pulmonary ventilation. So it measures the gas volumes contained in the lungs and the rate at which the gas can be expelled from the lungs. So to whom it is useful? So the indications for physicians, it is useful in diagnosing and monitoring the prognosis of the pulmonary disease. For surgeons and anesthetists, it is very important to get the fitness before the surgery and also to assess the patient in the post-operative period. In pre-placement examination, so before getting into any job, so it is very important to assess your lung, and for and also the in the research field, it is very important. For physiologists, it allows us to understand so volume and the velocity of air that can be moved in and out of the lungs. So lung and the chest wall compliance and the elasticity, recoiling capacity, and in the response of the respiratory tract to the medical intervention, how well the lung parenchyma is responding, and then the pulmonary blood flow. Indication, so diagnostic, confirmation of any clinical diagnosis, to perform the progress of disease and its response to treatment, to objectively assess the severity of the disease, to assess the respiratory status before anesthesia, to assess physical fitness for certain jobs such as those involving in strenuous physical exercise, flying at high altitude, to obtain the medical legal information in certain situations. Classification. So pulmonary function test is classified into ventilatory function test, test for diffusion, and test of ultimate purpose of respiration. Ventilatory function tests. These tests are done for the assessment of the expansion of the lungs and the chest wall, and also for the assessment of restrictive and obstructive obstructive lung diseases. So These ventilatory function tests can be done by the measurement of various lung volumes and capacities. As these volumes and capacities has been discussed separately, still we will um, go through them. In measurement of dead space, measurement of compliance, and the measurement of airway resistance. Assessment of ventilation. So lung volumes. So there are four: lung volume, tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. And lung capacities, their vital capacities, inspiratory capacity, functional residual capacity, and total lung capacity. And mechanics of breathing. So these are dynamic capacities. So timed vital capacity, maximum mid expiratory flow rate, maximum voluntary ventilation, peak expiratory flow rate, flow volume curve, closing volume, maximal expiratory pressure, and maximal inspiratory pressure. Lung volume and capacities, to start with, two types: static lung volumes and capacities. Here in the static, time factor is not involved, and it is all measured in millimeter and liters. So the static lung volumes and capacities are tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, residual volume, inspiratory capacity, functional residual capacity, vital capacity, and total lung capacity. Dynamic lung volumes and capacities, they are all time dependent. That is the difference between the static and the dynamic lung volumes and capacities. It is also measured in millimeter in relationship with the time. So millimeter or in liters per minute, and most of these can be measured by the spirometry, except some. We will discuss what they are. So tidal volume, so it is the volume of air inspired or expired during normal quiet breathing. It is same in both males and females, which is 500 milliliter. And then inspiratory reserve volume, so it is the maximum amount of air that can be inhaled after a normal tidal inspiration. So it differs in male and female. In males it is 3300 milliliter, and in females it is 1900 milliliter. And then expiratory reserve volume, so this is the maximum volume of air that can be expired after a normal tidal expiration. So it also differs in males and females. So in males it is 1000 milliliter, and females it is 700 milliliter. Residual volume, so it is a volume of air remaining in the lungs after maximal expiration. So it also differs in males and females. Residual volume. Inspiratory capacity, it is the maximum amount of air which can be inspired after completing the tidal expiration. So inspiratory capacity is, so inspiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume. So it is the inspiratory capacity. So it differs in male and female. So in males it is 3800 milliliter, and in females 2400 milliliter. So together with IRV and tidal volume together called as inspiratory capacity. Moving on to functional residual capacity. So volume of air remaining in the lungs at the end of the tidal expiration. So it is FRC is equal to expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume. So in males it is 2200 and in females it is 1800 milliliter. Vital capacity, so maximal volume of air that can be exhaled from the lungs after a maximum inspiration. So vital capacity is, so inspiratory reserve volume, tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume together. So in males it is 4800 milliliter and in females it is 3100 milliliters. Total lung capacity is the volume of air in the lungs after a maximal inspiration. So total lung volume is the total of all the volumes. So sorry, total lung capacity is total of the all the volumes, inspiratory reserve volume, tidal volume, expiratory reserve volume, and the residual volume. So in males it is maximum 6000 milliliter. In females it is 4200 milliliters. Factors affecting the vital capacities. So physiologically it is affected by the physical dimension like the size and the physical deviation. It differs from the sex, male and female. So age, so decline in old age, it affects the strength of the respiratory muscle, increases in the swimmers and the divers. Posture, so it differs in standing, sitting and lying. In pregnancy, so the vital capacity decreases, so that is because of the fetus. Pathological factors affecting the vital capacity, so diseases of the respiratory system, either obstructive or restrictive. Diseases of the heart, congestive congestive heart failure and pleural effusion and ascites. All these things affects the vital capacity. And you can see the volumes given here. It is summarized, all the volumes and the capacities, they are summarized, and the variation is clearly given. So you can see the total lung capacity. At last it varies in males and females, 6 liters and 4.2 liters. So spirometer, so it is a instrument that can measure the volume of air an individual can inhale or exhale as a function of time. That is also important. So this instrument is used to measure the lung volumes and the capacities. There are some exceptions. So records the amount of air and the rate of air that is breathed in and out over a specified time. So this is how the spirometer looks like. So in that the reading, the initial phases, the inspiration, and the second half is the expiration. So kindly note this. So this is inspiration and this is the expiration. So the subject is has to blow the air. So accordingly, the volumes are recorded and capacities are calculated. So let us see some brief history. So John Hutchinson, so he is the inventor of the spirometer. So in the originator of the term vital capacity. He is the one who coined it. So the original spirometer consisted of a calibrated bell turned upside down in water. So observed that vital capacity was directly related to height and inversely related to the age. So all these observations are based on the living and also the deceased subjects. It was all tried in them also. Spirometer, it cannot measure the residual volume. So the residual volume, which is not used, which portion is not used in the lung. So this residual volume cannot be measured. So functional residual capacity and the total lung capacity also cannot be measured using the spirometer. So we all know that this residual volume can be used using the other methods. So there are two methods which is used to measure the residual volume, that is the nitrogen washout method and helium dilution method. So this is how the spirometer look like. So here you can see this is the recording drum and you can see this is the floating drum. So you can see that there are two drums. So these simple spirometer is made up of fully metal. So the outer chamber here you can see this is the outer chamber, right? So outer chamber and inner chamber, and then you can see the drum here. So this outer chamber is filled with water. So the floating drum, so it is this floating drum has 6 liter capacity. So it floats in the water, but in the you can see it is in the inverted manner, upside down, right? So it is attached to a chain. This you will see in the laboratory. It is not exactly the same what you are seeing here, right? So it will be connected to a chain. So while doing the practicals, you will go through all these things. So this chain which passes over a pulley, here it is a pulley over there. So this pulley, it passes over the pulley bearing a balancing weight, and here there is a writing needle. So this needle moves with the movement of the floating drum. So it is not exactly here. So there is a floating drum over there, and over there is a chain connected to the pulley and the writing needle. So there is an inner chamber. So outer chamber and the inner chamber. Here it is. Here you can see the inner chamber. So it is open at the top end, which lies above the water level in the outer chamber, and it is connected to a tube. Here you can see the tube right at the bottom. So at the end of the tube, a mouthpiece is attached, so through which the patient can do the respiratory movements. So this is the recorder, right? This is how it records. So the whole procedure will be explained to you in the practical class. Okay, you are having spirometer uh, and vital capacity you have to measure in different positions. But I don't know how the COVID situation improves, then it will be decided. Nitrogen washout method. So this method is used to measure the functional residual capacity. So it is based on the assumption that alveolar air has 80% nitrogen. In this method, the subject is made to wash out the nitrogen from the lungs completely by inhaling the pure oxygen for 5 minutes and expiring it. So expiring into a large gas bag called Douglas bag. So the Douglas gas bag. So it is washed with pure oxygen, and so it is nitrogen free. Now the volume of gas collected in the Douglas bag and its nitrogen content are measured, and the volume of the functional residual capacity is calculated. So suppose the expired gas collected at the end of 5 minutes is 40 liters and its nitrogen concentration is only 5%, then the volume of nitrogen in the expired gas is around 200 ml. So the nitrogen content of the expired gas is solely from the subject's lungs, where it forms 80% of the gas present in the lung. So the FRC is calculated as 2000 into 100 by 80, so it comes around 2500 milliliter. So this Douglas bag plays an important role, and it is calculated from the uh, collected gas. So helium dilution method. So to measure the to estimate the functional residual capacity. So this is based on the principle that the amount of gas present is equal to its volume multiplied by its concentration. So which is A is equal to V into C. So a closed circuit system is prepared with a mixture of helium, oxygen and the air. The amount of helium added in the mixture is such as to achieve a helium concentration of 10%. The subject is then made to breathe in the closed system till the concentration of helium in the lungs and the bag becomes equal. So the helium concentration is measured at the end of normal expiration. So this is because the functional residual capacity is the volume of air remaining in the lungs. So at the end of normal expiration, so no helium was present in the lung to start with. So the same amount of helium was added to the mixture in the closed circuit system, gets distributed between the bag and the lung. So then the functional residual capacity can be calculated from the known volumes. And the residual volume can be calculated from the um, observed functional residual capacity. So residual volume is equal to functional residual capacity minus the expiratory reserve volume. So by this we can calculate the functional residual capacity. Measurement of dead space. So dead space is the portion of minute ventilation that does not take place in the gas exchange. So normally it is constituted by the air present in the conducting zone of the respiratory passages, but in some diseases it may additionally include some poorly perfused alveoli also. So that is the anatomical and the physiological dead space. Okay, so on. Normally, measurement of dead space. So anatomical dead space can be measured by single breath nitrogen curve, and total dead space can be measured by Bohr's equation. So this Bohr's equation is used to measure the dead space by determining the pressure of carbon dioxide in the expired and the alveolar gas. So it is based on the fact that inspired air so contains very less or um, almost zero amount of the carbon dioxide. So whereas all the carbon dioxide in the expired air, it is from the functional alveoli. So the carbon dioxide in the expired air is not from the inspired air. It is only from the functional alveoli. So based on the Bose equation, the physiological dead space, that is the total dead space, is measured. So using the formula, so PO2 is the carbon dioxide pressure in the mixed expired air. PaCO2 is the carbon dioxide pressure in the alveolar air, and Vt is tidal volume and Vd is the physiological dead space. Measurement of compliance. So the elastic recoiling of the lung, which is measured under static condition, it is called as the compliance. So the volume change per unit transpulmonary pressure difference between the esophageal and intrapleural pressure and the mouth pressure. So the change of volume per unit transpulmonary pressure difference between the esophageal or intrapleural pressure and the mouth pressure. So it measures the relative stiffness and distensibility of the lungs and thorax. If the volume change per unit pressure change is higher than normal, the tissues are more distensible, and if it is less than the tissue, if it is less than the tissue are stiffer than normal. So patients with disease decreased compliance put more respiratory effort to achieve adequate alveolar ventilation, and therefore they are dyspneic. So that is the reason they are dyspneic. So measurement of airway resistance. So it represents the frictional resistance to airflow through the conducting air passages. So resistance caused by the friction of gas molecules between themselves and the walls of the air. So measurement of the following respiratory parameters gives a fair idea of the mechanics of breathing which we use in the clinical practice. So timed vital capacity, maximum mid expiratory flow rate, maximum voluntary ventilation, peak expiratory flow rate, maximum expiratory flow volume curve, closing volume, and maximal inspiratory pressure and maximal expiratory pressure. So these are the parameters to know the airway resistance. So patient with increased airway resistance, they often present with serious mechanical issues, and they develop the dyspnea. So the degree of the dyspnea that they develop, it all depends on the severity of the increased airway resistance. Timed vital capacity FEV1, also called as forced expiratory volume in 1 second, percentage of inspired air in the specified time, which measures the vital capacity in relation to time and gives a portion of the vital capacity expired in a specified time. So it is an index of air flow rate. It is one of the most useful tests to detect the generalized airway obstruction. So this timed vital capacity or the forced expiratory volume in first second is very important to know. So I'll be very happy if you just understand what this timed vital capacity is in this whole class. So this FE1 is it is going to be very useful until your clinical practice. So even after so all your career it will be useful. So get to know more about timed vital capacity. So timed vital capacity, so it measures the fraction of the forced vital capacity that is expired in 1 second. So majority of the forced vital capacity can be exhaled in less than 3 seconds in the normal people. So FE1 is the forced expiratory volume in the first second. So that is around 80%. In the second it is around 80 sorry 93%, and in the third second it will be 98%. So this forced expiratory volume in the first second, second, third second, so all these measurements helps to differentiate the lung diseases, that is whether it is of obstructive type or restrictive type. So if it is obstructive, it will be difficult to expire. If it is restrictive, the lung is restricted, it is difficult to inspire. So all these things counts, and this test is very important in your when you do your clinical practice. So if the forced vital capacity is 5 liters and the volume of air expired in the first second is 4 liters, then the forced expired volume in the first second is 80%. Forced expiratory flow during the 20 to 75% of expiration. So it is also called as maximum mid expiratory flow rate. So it is the mean expiratory flow rate during the mid 50% of the forced vital capacity. So the normal, so it is measured in liters per minute. So normal forced expiratory flow during the 20-75% of expiration is 300 liters per minute. So this mid expiratory time, so it refers to the time taken for the forced expiratory flow 25-75%. So normally it is the normal value is of half second. So this time is increased in the obstructive lung diseases. So so this may reflect the effort independent of the expiration, and also it explains the status of the small airways. Maximum breathing capacity or maximum voluntary ventilation or maximum ventilation volume. So it has different terms. So it is a maximum volume of air that can be ventilated. So during a given interval. So this is the largest volume of air that can be moved into and out of the lungs in 1 minute by maximum voluntary effort. So in a normal adult male, the maximum ventilatory volume is 80 to 170 liters per minute. So this volume is reduced in patients with emphysema, airway obstruction, and very poor respiratory muscle strength. So this is one of the index of ventilatory function. It depends upon the complete response from the subject also. So when asked to breathe as rapidly and also deeply for 15 seconds continuously. So the volume of air moved in is recorded in the spirometer. So with a writing point. So and then the result is expressed in liter per minute. Peak expiratory flow rate. So it is the maximum velocity with which air is forced out of the lung in a single forced expiratory effort. So the maximum rate of airflow observed during a sudden forced expiration. So this is important that it is from the position of full inspiration. So this is how it is measured, and it can be easily used by patients even at home. So they take the best three efforts, they put it, and it is a good and reproducible measure of degree of air flow obstruction. So this is used by the COPD patients. So the normal rate is 350 to 400 liters per minute. Usually this indicates the large and central airway obstruction. So it is measured by Wright's free flow meter. This is the Wright's free flow meter now we use in our laboratory. It was earlier. Maximum expiratory flow volume. So this detects the airway obstruction in the earlier phase. But because of the limitation of the forced expiratory volume in per second, so certain other tests are performed so to know the airway obstruction in its early phase. So they include the Vmax 75% response of maximum expiratory flow volume curve to inhalation of helium and then the closing volume. So in maximum expiratory flow volume curve, so the flow is plotted against a volume exhaled. So this Vmax 70% is the volume achieved after exhaling 75% of the total forced volume capacity. Closing volume, so it detects the small airway obstruction by measuring the volume of gas remaining in the lung after closure of small airways in the gravity dependent lung areas. Here you can see the flow and the volume loop. So this is the spirometric measurement. So here you can see the inspiratory loop, expiratory loop, and then you can see the forced vital capacity, and this is the forced expiratory volume in 1 second, around 80%, and this is the forced expiratory flow and the mid 25 to 70%. Maximal inspiratory pressure and maximal expiratory pressure. So maximal inspiratory pressure, it is when the patient exhales completely to residual volume and then tries to inspire maximally against an occluded airway. So the pressure generated in this manner is the maximal inspiratory pressure. So this assesses the strength of the inspiratory muscles, and then maximal expiratory pressure. So it is when the patient inhales completely to total lung capacity and then tries to expire maximally against an occluded airway. So the pressure generated in this manner is the maximal expiratory pressure. So this assesses the strength of the expiratory muscles. Minute ventilation or the pulmonary ventilation, it is the volume of air inspired or expired by lungs in 1 minute. So this minute ventilation is the tidal volume multiplied by the respiratory rate. So tidal volume into respiratory rate. So the minute ventilation is approximately 6 liters per minute. So pulmonary reserve or the breathing reserve. So this refers to the maximum volume of air above the pulmonary ventilation, which can be breathed in and out of the lungs in 1 minute. So it equals maximum ventilation volume minus the pulmonary ventilation. So which is breathing reserve is equal to maximum ventilation volume minus the pulmonary ventilation. So if the maximum ventilation volume is 100 liters per minute and pulmonary ventilation is 6 liters per minute, then 100 minus 6 is breathing reserve is 94 liters per minute. So the dyspneic index, or it is also you can say as percentage of the pulmonary reserve. So in the last slide we have seen the pulmonary reserve. So this pulmonary reserve is usually expressed as percentage of maximum ventilation volume and is also known as percentage pulmonary reserve or the dyspneic index. So the dyspneic index is equal to maximum voluntary ventilation minus pulmonary ventilation divided by maximum voluntary ventilation into 100. So when we apply it, we get it as percentage 94%. So this thick index is nothing but, and the breathing reserve or the pulmonary reserve is expressed in percentage. So normal dyspneic index value is 60 to 90% with the average of 75%. So if it is less than 60%, then dyspnea is usually present. Short and systemic way of interpretation. So we have to see whether the forced vital capacity is normal or abnormal. We have to see the forced expiratory volume in 1 second, whether it is normal or abnormal. If both are normal, then pulmonary function test is normal. If both decrease, then they are having some issues with the lung. So if the forced expiratory volume in 1 second is around 69% or lesser than that, then that is they are having the obstructive disease. If the forced expiratory volume in 1 second is more than 80% or 80 to 90%, then that is restrictive type of lung disease. So just have this pasted in your clinic. So which is very important and not that difficult to understand. So to know the lung disease after doing the pulmonary function test, you have to classify the disease whether it is obstructive type or the restrictive type. So you have to know the following parameters. So as we have discussed, so if the vital capacity in obstructive lung disease can be normal or decreased. In restrictive, it will be decreased. Total lung capacity in obstructive lung disease, it will be normal or increased, whereas in restrictive, it will be decreased. Residual volume is increased in obstructive and decreased in restrictive. The ratio of the forced expiratory volume in 1 second by forced vital capacity is always decreased in the obstructive disorders and it will be normal or increased in the restrictive disorder. Whereas the maximum mid expiratory flow rate is decreased in the obstructive disorders and will be normal in the restrictive disorder. The maximum breathing capacity is decreased in the obstructive lung diseases and in restrictive it can be normal or decreased. So just you have to remember, so which by which you can using the portable spirometer. So these days the pulmonologists they look for the expiratory uh, so forced expiratory volume in 1 second and the forced vital capacity ratio. So this ratio means a lot. They do it first uh, when the patient comes and after giving the inhalation of bronchodilators or accordingly they redo it and they see how good uh, the symptoms have improved. Let us discuss both the disorders. So obstructive disorders, bronchial asthma and chronic obstructive lung diseases, bronchiectasis, cystic fibrosis and bronchiolitis. So these are all of obstructive type by which it is difficult for the patient to expire. So restrictive, there are two types, one is parenchymal and extraparenchymal. Here in the restrictive type, it is difficult to inhale as there will be some restriction for the lung to expand. So sarcoidosis, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, pneumo, pneumoconiosis, drugs or radiation which induces the interstitial lung disease. And then restrictive type, which is extraparenchymal, the neuromuscular is diaphragmatic paralysis or the weakness. So it will be difficult for the patients to use the diaphragm for the respiration. Myasthenia gravis, and then cervical spine injury, and then chest wall that itself in kyphoscoliosis, and then obesity and ankylosing spondylitis. So these are all the extra parenchymal restrictive disorders. Spirometry, these are all the spirometry graphs. So this is what normally we get the loop. This will be the normal loop when the patient is has to take one full breath. So here you can see during the obstruction type how it is. So what is increased and what is decreased. So in restrictive type, So the dotted lines are the normal one, and you can see the in obstructant type the volume is somewhat fine, but you can see the flow how restricted that is. Here, here you can see the volume is completely reduced in the restriction type. So they can there can be mixed type also. Here you can see. So both the uh, flow and the volume what it is. I hope this can explain the many things in this. You can see that if 80% here it is the forced expiratory volume in 1 second if it is 80% watt, if it is reduced watt, and if it is normal or increased watt. It's all clearly explained in this one graph. So this is the algorithm which through which we can easily know that which pattern is the patient is suffering from, whether they are restrictive pattern or the obstructive pattern. So to start with, so after the spirometry, just look for the ratio of forced expiratory volume in 1 second and the forced vital capacity ratio. So lesser than the lower limit of normal. If it is lower, then that is of obstructive pattern. If it is not, then it can be restrictive or normal. Okay, so using this curve, this algorithm, we can come to an conclusion that whether they are normal or restrictive or obstructive or mixed. So if the FVC is lesser than the lower limit of normal, then that is restrictive pattern. Then know the total lung capacity. So if it is the total lung capacity is known, then if the total lung capacity is lesser than the lower limit, then it is uh, then we have to quantitate the restriction using the total lung capacity as a percentage of predicted value. If not, the rest we can say that the test is normal. So if we don't know the total lung capacity, then we have to quantitate the restriction using the forced vital capacity as a percentage of predicted value. So we have to quantitate before deciding the restrictive pattern. And if it is obstructive, then we have to quantitate the obstruction using the FE1 as a percentage of predicted value. So if it the FVC um, lesser than the normal limit, then we have to know the total lung capacity. If known, we have to, or if it is lesser than the lower limit, then that is mixed of restriction in the obstruction. If the total lung capacity is not lower, then that is pure obstruction. So if the total lung capacity is not known, so it can be either can be mixed or pure obstruction. Moving on to the assessment of gas exchange, to start with the ventilation perfusion relationship. So under even under the normal conditions, the inspired air is not distributed evenly. You all know that. So in erect posture, the resting ventilation per unit volume of lung is greater than at the, so it is greater at the bases than at the apexes. So the difference becomes less in the lying posture and during the exercise. But in diseased condition, the distribution becomes very much more uneven, resulting in having the hypoventilated and the hyperventilated areas. Such non-uniform distribution of inspired gas leads to decreased oxygen tension in the arterial bed. So the uniformity of distribution of inspired air is measured by the nitrogen washout method. So an alveolar gas sample after 7 minutes of breathing oxygen normally, so that contains less than 2.5% of nitrogen. Higher the percentage of nitrogen in the alveolar sample, so then there is a degree of non-uniformity of distribution of inspired gas. So the perfusion is also not uniform in the RX posture, so that is due to the effect of gravity. So we all know the normal ratio of ventilation perfusion is 0.8, but so greater the degree of non-uniform perfusion occurs in diseases, right? In diseases like pulmonary embolisms, and also which are the diseases that destroys the lung parenchyma. So the arterial blood oxygen tension is primarily affected, so by this relationship of ventilation and perfusion. Diffusion is a physical process by which the gas move across a membrane from the region of higher partial pressure to the region of lower partial pressure. So measurement of the arterial blood gas pressure is essential in the evaluation of the pulmonary function test. So normal value of the oxygen pressure is 90 to 95 millimeter of mercury, and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 36 to 44 millimeter of mercury. Gas sampling and analysis, sampling of the alveolar air. So there is Haldane Presley method. So in this, forced expiration is done through a long narrow tube by closing the mouthpiece with the tongue. So the sample of the air contained near the mouthpiece of the tube is withdrawn through a side tube into a sampling tube. So the last to be expelled from the lung, that is considered as the alveolar air. So this is how the sampling of alveolar air is done by the Haldane-Presley method. So another method is Van-Otis method. So breathing through a mouthpiece fitted with inspiratory and expiratory valves collects a sample of the end tidal volume. So then the samples are passed into the gas analysis. So sampling of expired air, a two-way wall is fixed to the Douglas bag and then collected to the mouth of the subject. The atmospheric air is inhaled and then exhaled into the bag. So respiratory gas analysis, so samples of inspired air and then mixed expired air and the alveolar air, which is collected by the Haldane-Presley method, or taken for the analysis of partial pressure of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and then the nitrogen also. So there are gas analyzers available to give the exact partial pressure of different gases. And then blood gas analysis, the oxygen content of the blood is determined by the Haldane's gas analysis. So the venous blood is collected and then they are sent for the analysis. The oxygen carrying the capacity of the blood is estimated by the Van Steek gasometric method. The partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is also determined with the help of the gasometer. Pulmonary blood flow and pressure. So this is the assessment of the pulmonary circulation. So the assessment of pulmonary circulation depends upon the measuring the pulmonary vascular pressure and the cardiac output also. So with the flow directed pulmonary arterial catheter, the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary capillary wedge pressures can be measured directly. This is a direct method. And cardiac output can be obtained by the thermodilution method. So normal pulmonary vascular resistance is 50 to 150 times second per centimeter to the power of 5. In summary, pulmonary function tests act only to support or exclude a diagnosis. So combination of thorough history, physical examination, as well as supporting the laboratory analysis and imaging is helpful in developing a plan for the patient with the pulmonary dysfunction. So books to follow: Hindu Purana, Canon, G.K. Paul, and Guyton Hall. Thank you.